Welcome to Passive Wealth Principles. I'm your host, Jake Harris. Today, I have Cody Bjugan. I actually pronounced his name wrong on the actual episode. I've always pronounced it as Bjugan. I don't know, maybe that's the French or the Louisiana way of pronouncing it. I'm not even from Louisiana. But Cody Bjugan, man, we talk about some amazing things, how you can and how he leveraged investing into some land deals, only $250,000 into the land deal and profit of over $5 million. No debt, no leverage, no anything. So $250,000 in, $5 million out in about 2-year time period. What a fantastic story that is. We also talk about when he almost went to prison for some IRS structuring and basically he was putting money back into the bank, and IRS came knocking because they thought he was selling drugs or setting up a embezzlement ring or something, laundering money. So that is a fantastic little nugget that you should look out for. And then obviously the way and his story and starts out of getting his high school girlfriend pregnant, how that made him have to jump into reality of working, becoming a tile setter in the unions and the contractor union starting out. So this is, again, a fantastic episode that I'm very excited to share with the people of Passive Wealth Principles. And now, without further ado, Cody. My dude, Cody Bjugan. I am very excited for this episode. You're actually I want to say one of the first few people in GoBundance that I connected up with. And you did the thing that I had some background in, was dirt and land development. And I would talk to people and they'd look at me like I was, had 3 heads or something. And I was like, well, no, you buy land and you have to go to this entitlement. And they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then I find out you've been doing some of those same things for years. So I'm very excited for this opportunity to dissect a little bit of that.
For sure. Well, thanks for having me, man. And you're right. I mean, the reality is, even however many years later in GoBundance, still 99% of the guys in the room are going to think you have 3 heads when you start talking about it. And that's what I love about the space, right? I mean, it's a space that's not highly taught and it's not highly competitive. And we're at VestRight, which is on my shirt. That's our attempt, is to teach more people the space, because, there's life-changing profits in the space and a lot of time freedom that goes along with the space, because the deals, I can go make in one deal what, say a house wholesaler, for example. There's one of those on every street corner right now. And right behind them, by the way, are apartment syndicators. But, nothing against that. I mean, but my point is, they'll go do 300 deals, what I might make on one deal, right? And so there's a certain time freedom where you can be successful in all areas of your life instead of just one. Through the model. So, but we can get into whatever you want to get into today.
Yeah,
buddy,
no,
so.
I'm very interested to dive into this deeper, because I think it's such a unique niche of real estate. For me, I know you a little bit, and we've got a chance to spend some time together. But I think your backstory, your history is very, very interesting. So. The tile guy, the guy that, I mean, you finished high school, right?
Yeah.
high school kind of
hardly, but yeah, I did. Yeah.
So tell me for the audience, give us a history of, how does Cody become a dirt dog millionaire?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. You caught on to something as far as one of my titles I'm thinking about. I'm trying to build a brand of trust. Okay. I think trust is the foundation of any and every relationship. And I quite frankly think nothing sells better than trust either. Nothing is more powerful at the negotiating table than trust. And so the reason I'm telling you that story is as I, I'm interviewed or people, I spend time with people, I have 3 words that come to mind of how I'm committed to presenting myself. I'm actually intentional about this, is being authentic, transparent, and vulnerable, right? So I'm going to be real to who I am. I'm going to be transparent as far as anything you want to know, bud, like nothing's off limits. And then lastly, just be vulnerable, right? Like be willing to there was a group I used to be a part of called EO, Entrepreneur Organization, and what they talk about is the bottom 5% and the top 5%. So the 90% in the middle fucking means nothing. It's worthless. So what I mean by that is share your worst 5% and your top 5%, because that's where the magic happens, and that's where you can really impact lives. And so as far as my backstory, just real quick, I'll try to keep it simple. I'll just hit some points for you, right? Because I could start rapping about my history, but I'll just start off by saying I grew up in a small little town called Damascus, Oregon. Grew up in a household where not the best mentorships, not the best leadership or examples set for me. A lot of, quite frankly, with my father, he taught me a lot of what not to be, which, he still taught me something, but, it was more watching him. It made me want to pivot in a lot of different directions opposite of him. And so, when I was in a young age, one thing I knew I wanted to do was pivot. I wanted to change the legacy of the family. And what happened is in high school, got my high school girlfriend pregnant. And so I graduated in June, and I got married in August, and I had a baby in September. So what happened is, as soon as I graduated high school, I originally was going to go off to ASU, do the whole party thing, right? Screw off. Didn't know, quite frankly, how I was going to pay for it, but life responsibilities hit me, and I took ownership for, this young lady that I, got pregnant, and it was my fault. I'm the one that didn't pull out. So anyways, I went right into the flooring union right out of high school, brother, just right out of high school. And the reason I did that is because after 3 months in the union, you qualify for health insurance. And so it was the best way I knew how to be able to pay for my baby boy that was on the way. And so I was in that flooring industry. I ended up moving out of the union. Long story short, I was in that industry for 5 years, did amazing things, ended up running a company. We were probably the fastest growing company in the industry in the state. But I got to a point where I either needed to own a store, because I'd kind of capped out, and I was super driven, hungry, motivated, and became a workaholic, quite frankly, which, there's a lot of, I'm not doing that. I learned my lesson on being a workaholic. Let's just say that was a huge failure. So I ended up, do I want to own a store, or I need to go do something different? And a lot of my clients were builders, developers, and one thing led to another, and linked up with another guy, and we went and started land development and home building in 2002. And then made a lot of money, did a lot of great things. Our partnership only lasted 2 years, and then I rolled on my own. And then 07, 08 happened, and I lost 90% of my net worth. Back then, give or take, in 2006, I was 28. Yeah, 28. And I was worth about 20 million. And by the time I was 29, I was worth probably about 2 million. And I'll tell you, I learned a lot more losing it than I ever did making it. I could have killed it during that downturn if I would have known how to go after the opportunity, but I was a snot-nosed punk. Wealthy, living in a mansion, had a Ferrari, all that bullshit. And I didn't have any mentors in my life. I wasn't doing courses. I wasn't doing masterminds. I wasn't going to events. I wasn't reading books. What the hell? What do I need all that shit for? And so what happened is that, I made it through it. And, but at the end of the day, man, what a huge missed opportunity. I don't believe in regrets, but a lot of wealth was built during that downturn. Anyways, 2011 hits. And by the way, during that downturn, I bought into an online health and fitness company that I ended up running for several years. We sold it in 19. But one story I really want to tell you. So I learned responsibility through getting my high school girlfriend pregnant, right? I learned what a dollar's really worth, or how to view a dollar, when I lost it all in 07, 08. And then one of my pet peeves is the victim mentality. And then in 2012, 13, I became a hypocrite as far as the victim mentality. And what I mean by that is that I went through about a 3-year phase in my life, where about 2.5 years, where I was hitting the bottle 3-4 nights a week, escaping reality, getting hammered. And it's because I felt sorry for myself. I was trying to escape. And the reason I felt sorry for myself, and this will be, I get a kick out of the story now, is that when the market crashed, I started selling all my toys, right? Whatever I had. And it was all after-tax dollars, blah, blah, blah. But I started having everybody pay me in cash, because when all that was going down, we didn't know it was on the other side. Like, my wife and we were like, let's start stacking some cash. So I stacked some cash into my safe. And when the market started coming back in 2011, 12, I was like, I need to get this cash back into the system, because I started to get back into real estate. And a guy's like, Cody, don't go. I don't remember how much cash it was. Let's just say, I think it was around $100,000, not a ton, but enough cash to, get someone's attention. And so a bunch of my buddies were like, Cody, don't go put $100,000 cash in the system all at once, right? Like, IRS is going to be all over you, right? Where did that cash come from? And so they're like, do small deposits in numerous banks, keep them below 10 grand. And that's how you get back in the system. Well, lo and behold, probably, I don't know how many months later, my wife calls me when I'm at work, and she says, Cody, you need to get home. I'm like, why? She says, well, there's 2 IRS agents at our front door. I'm like, what? I'm like, the IRS sends letters, not agents, and so I get home, and I'm being prosecuted for something called structuring. And so structuring is a law that's in place to catch criminals that are trying to basically embezzle money. It's drug money, right? And so it's a law that, whether you know it or not, it's you commit the crime, whether you know it's a law or not. So what happened is I went into a victim mentality at that point, because I quickly found out through hiring the criminal attorney and all that shit that I faced 5 years in prison. And so one thing led to another. We're seeking out the feds. I hate negative energy, so we're chasing them actually to settle the deal. We end up settling it out, and so the deal was made is that I took a misdemeanor, and they got to keep the cash. Even the agent acknowledged, they saw that it was all after-tax dollars, meaning that, because I had bills of sale for everything I sold. I had a journal, a log of every cash deposit I made in my safe. Everybody could see that it was after-tax dollars, but it's irrelevant. The crime was still committed. And so, I really came to realize, when you go through something like that, it's hard to relate to people that have been through really tough things, unless you've gone through them yourself. And out of losing my money, out of getting my high school girlfriend pregnant, that right there is that I believe the Lord is building me. He's making a warrior out of me. He's creating life experiences in my life to make me stronger. He's preparing me for battle. And that particular life experience, that particular battle, made me stronger than any other battle I'd been through. And I'm grateful for that, right? Because, those that have been through tough stuff, one, I can relate to a lot of them, but also it is hard to shake me. Or I should say, it's a lot harder to shake me now than it was before that. So anyways, whatever that was, we settled that deal in 15, 16, and I've been doing my land deals, and then where we're at today is I started teaching what I do in 2019 through VestRight, which is on my shirt. I have my company Allied Development, which beginning of 2021, I ended up getting out of the way of that company. I have a CEO in place and a headquarters in Dallas. I live in Scottsdale / Paradise Valley, Arizona. And my business is exploding. And it's because I finally humbled myself to realize I needed to get out of the way. And I needed, the biggest thing holding my company back was me. I was the biggest thing. We had huge opportunity, huge potential, and it was me. And that was a humbling experience. I realized I had to separate Cody Bjugan from Allied Development. Those two brands or identities were very much tied together. I was the company was me. As soon as I split that apart, I got out of the way of my company. We have multiplied, and we're doing deals all across the country now. And I'm focused more on where my giftings are, and life's good, man. And I have opportunities to get on podcast interviews like this with guys like you. So it's been really fun to have an impact and to be able to be a part of people's lives and spread my circle of influence, I should say.
Man, that is, you hit on so many things that I want to talk about. I mean, there are so many key nuggets, and in fact that we've got to chat about over the past. And I want to put a note in a couple of those. Obviously, the time, and think about the IRS agents and settling and doing some things like that. Also getting out of your own way as far as taking kind of how Cody was the dam or the whatever linchpin of your organization, and everything pivoted off of your ability to grow that, and then just by getting out of the way. But what I wanted to dive back into was we shared a story about your first land deal. And about your mentor that you reached out to. And I just think there's a lot of value in that because of some of the things, and maybe you don't even exactly remember the story, but I'd like to hear as far as the first land deal that you did, and you were driving by this piece of parcel and stuff, and then how you reached out.
I'll tell you that. Yeah. Okay. So, that gentleman at the time, he wasn't a mentor of mine, but he was a big name guy in town, right? And everybody know who he is. He was he was one of the highest producing real estate agents in the city. Okay. So everybody knew him. His name was on bus benches and billboards and blah, blah, blah. So what happened is, this is when I was still in the flooring industry at a company called McAdam. And, I was kind of rolling. I was, running that company at the time, and I wanted to buy a piece of land to actually build my personal home on. And so and there was this piece of land I drove by all the time, and there was this shitty old little sign out front. It was kind of like a for sale by owner sign. It looked like it'd been out there for 20 years, right? Completely weathered. And so I called this guy, Brian. I'm like, hey, Brian, my name's Cody, blah, blah, blah. Here's who I am. I'm looking for a piece of dirt, in the area to build a house. And you have anything you'd recommend to me? He's like, Cody, there's a piece of property right around the corner from where I personally live that's the piece you should go buy. Go buy that piece. I said, okay. Thanks, Brian. So I don't know. I called Brian back weeks later, maybe a month later. I don't remember. I was like, hey, Brian, so I bought that one, that was really fun. Like, doing real estate is a blast. Like, you got any others? He's like, dude, who's this shit snot-nosed kid? Like, because he come to find out, he was thinking about buying it himself. He wasn't taking me serious. And that's kind of how his and I's relationship took off. And because then eventually he saw where I was at McAdam, he saw where I kind of hit a ceiling and I needed to do something different. And then that's when he asked me if I would partner with him, and we could go do, because he was an agent, and let's go do land and build homes together. And then we're still buddies to this day. I just talked to him the other day. And just because you're buddies, by the way, doesn't mean you make a great partnership, just to be clear. And so I've learned that a few different ways. But yeah, that's kind of how that was the kickoff for that relationship, which then put me into the space I'm in.
To me, it was the symbol of just taking action. And that's what I love about you, is that like you're an action guy. Like, you just you don't necessarily think about the consequences. Sometimes you're not over analyzing your things. You're like, no, I'm not pulling out. Like, this is awesome right now. Oh, wait a minute. Now I have to deal with the other side of that. But the reality is that by taking action, it launched you into this new career of land.
100%. And I'll say, like, action's never been a challenge for me. What I have found out, though, like, I'd much rather, what do they say, that a plan you take action on is better than the perfect plan that you don't take action on, basically. And so I probably take action, some just being frank, to a fault. And I'm learning that as we're building out our corporation, like with all these employees and this team. Like, I want to, you and I were talking about a minute ago, like, I want to go implement it all right now. And it's just not effective. Right. And so it's knowing how to prioritize what to take action on first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. But yeah, I mean, action, I mean, we've all heard it a million times. I mean, I really don't. I mean, those guys that are sitting on the sidelines, I mean, if you're not in the game, it's kind of irrelevant what you have to say, to be frank. I mean, you need to take action and get in the game.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things. I've said it as a podcast guest, as as a speaker, and just go do shit. Because part of
Yeah.
the thing is, even if it's the wrong direction, you can
Yeah.
discover that, like, wait, this is wrong. I don't like this. That's better than sitting there and be like, wow, at one point I'm going to go do stuff. And
Yeah.
to your point of the mistakes and, I call them mistakes. They're not really mistakes, but they're your path in life, that you
Yeah.
and
Trials, tribulations. Yeah.
I've yet to find or meet a person that has lived that perfect life. I didn't meet Jesus. I have faith that he exists and there's higher powers, but I have not met anyone on this planet that did not have a slew of failures in their past and really being that journey. So I'd like to dive into, you know, learning the value of the dollar and the downturn of that. So you're making a bunch of money, you're doing and living the quasi American dream, big house, fast cars, beautiful family, everything's great, and then it's not. So if you could dive into a little bit of what that was like when the world was financially kind of turning for you. What were some of the mistakes that you had made during that time period that obviously when you're in retreat, it's hard to be proactive, to be building wealth. And so I ask that because I think that's certainly valuable, especially as maybe we're coming into a recession. I think technically we're in a recession. It just hasn't been announced yet. And there's ways in which you can now really build wealth when there's a downturn.
Yeah.
But if you're not, getting kicked in the teeth.
Yeah. Yeah. And luckily, we're not leveraged like we were back then. So it's completely different. Nor do I think we have the Great Recession coming. I do think we are in a recession right now. It's just everybody's a little late. I mean, we just like you don't know where the top is or the bottom is until it's too late. You don't know you're in a recession until you're already in one. But so remember, I'm a guy that grew up in a small little town. I'm a meat and potatoes guy, simple words. We got our first street light in our town when I was in high school, right? So I don't overcomplicate shit. All right. So here's the thing. Okay. So I was in my 20s, had all the nice stuff, living the American dream, but my kids didn't even know who I was. Right. I didn't have a successful relationship with my wife. Right. I was a workaholic. So yes, did I pivot and did I do a lot of the things in a successful way that I saw my father not do? Yes. Okay. But I made other mistakes. Was my father a workaholic? No. So I didn't learn from, I didn't learn to not be a workaholic by watching him be a workaholic. That was one of the things that he didn't struggle with. So I didn't learn that. I learned that through my failures is that, when you start losing it all, it's just like when people say, when you're on your deathbed, are you going to say, I wish I would have made another dollar? No, you're not. What I learned through all of that is literally, if your goal or your dream is related to a dollar, I would suggest you find another goal or dream, right? Is that literally all money is a tool. That is all it is. It's literally a tool. And so I've been able to rebuild my relationship with money. And so even with the times we're going through right now, there's people around me where they become paralyzed and or even before this, what we're going through right now, they were scared to take risk. Okay. And and that's fine depending on what the goal is, right? But, if you have, I just a lot of times I think what their vision is relative to what their risk tolerance is, they don't match up. Okay. You don't become, get into a certain position without taking risks. Now, with that said, guys like me that went through the Great Recession, we often are risk. We don't have a high tolerance for risk because we don't want to lose it all again. But what if you just restructured the model? What if you took risk, but they're calculated risks where your downside is protected, right? And so what I've done over the years, I've created this very unique business model within the land development industry where I can take risk, I can play in a risky industry, but I've hedged my bets by protecting my downside. And I can explain what that is, but my point is, if we are in a recession right now, we have no risk. Well, Lord willing, the Lord can decide to do whatever he wants. But as far as what we see on paper, we don't have a lot of exposure or risk to the market. And it's because of how the model's built. So, I'm kind of rambling at this point, but I just know that, my joy, my happiness, I'm getting ready to leave next week and go, out of town for over a month. To me, that's exciting. Those special moments with my family, those, I'm a spiritual guy. I think that, a man of faith. One thing that just popped in my head is just because I want to drop this, with you on this interview, is this thing of this, one of my shirts, it says believe, action, faith. And, one of the things that really hurt me in the last downturn is that I wasn't exercising my faith muscle. Meaning, if you try to control everything, you're fucked. You're done. Okay. You cannot control everything. Is that you need to believe in yourself and whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. You need to take the action to make that take place. But at the end of the day, the rest is up to faith. You're not in control of everything. As soon as you try to control everything, you're done for. Is that you get up every morning, you hoe your field, but at the end of the day, the vegetation's not up to you. It's just not. And I lost a lot of years probably off my life and hair, as you can see, going through that downturn because I was trying to control the outcome of everything. And it's just not possible. It's just not.
Yeah, I think that's a great little nugget, is that, there's only certain things that you can control. You control your effort, what you're putting into it. And so that there's certainly a very valuable thing that you mentioned about being like, workaholic. So you're away from your family, so you don't have those relationships. Definitely in my own past is very much, it's easy to go get sucked into the work, hedonic treadmill, because you get the accolades and you get the money and you get all these other things. But then, like you, I think the losing everything in the subprime meltdown changed my relationship with money. It changed my relationship with understanding, where I was myopically focused. 80-90% of my focus was on money. And then I realized like how little of my life it was actually important. And so I actually hope that everyone becomes wildly successful, makes lots of money, so that they realized that it's not about the money at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not going to sit here and bullshit you. I mean,
money's real. I mean, it's the fuel.
Money's real. Money's a tool, though. At the end of the day, it's a tool. If you want to go do something cool, great. Use the tool, right? If you want to go have a life experience, great. Use the tool. As soon as you think that the life experience or the joy is in the actual money, you're going to set yourself up for disappointment. It's just a tool to go do some cool shit or have some great life experiences, right? So, I mean, anybody that says, oh, money doesn't bring happiness. Yeah, I'm sure money alone, but I'm not going to sit here and say money doesn't create opportunities for you to go do some really cool shit. By the way, I don't even like the word happy. It's just, I'm not a fan of the word happy, but happy is a very temporary, empty word. At the end of the day, what we're all searching for, and this is what you'll never find in the dollar, what we are all searching for, whether you know it or not, is fulfillment. Okay. That's why my personal slogan is purpose, impact, fulfillment. And by the way, you will, mark my words, you will never find true fulfillment without having an impact, period. Right? You won't. And so, when you start thinking about fulfillment versus happy, it totally changes your perspective, because you got to start looking at all the elements of life, because to be truly fulfilled, you've got to have all your pillars of life above the line, right? Let's say you have a chart, and up here it's success and down here it's failure, and there's a line in the middle. The goal is you got to keep every one of your pillars up above the line in the success section, right? To me, that's when fulfillment starts happening. And by the way, you're never going to have all your pillars of life clear up at the top, just killing it, okay? Because that's called perfection. And the only person that's perfect is Jesus. So don't be trying to nail every single one of them at once, having them all at 10s, because it's not possible. But I do think it's possible to keep them all above 5s, right? Kind of above the line.
Yeah, that's like you said, so there's all those different pillars in life. So money is a pillar, your income that you're making, because you got to, feed yourself, you got to keep the lights on. But the reality is it's 1/6 of what makes up your life, or 1/10,
so what's
or however,
the point of having
1/5.
that at a 10 if all the rest of them are below 5, right? Like,
right.
Dude, you just failed beyond belief.
And I think that's the old school or traditional way. And actually someone had mentioned that about Donald Trump, when they asked him, like, are you a good father? And he's like, I'm a good provider. And to me, like, that was just like, man, I don't want that to be me with my kids. Is like,
totally.
Dad made a lot of money, but he was never home. And obviously you've experienced some of that in your past.
Yeah, I went through that with my two oldest, and now I got a 2-year-old, and I'm just the opposite. My goal is to be the most badass, amazing father to this 2-year-old, because the Lord gave me a second chance. Now I have a great relationship with my 2 oldest now, who are 24 and 20, but I didn't always, right? But I was given the opportunity to learn from my failures and my mistakes, and then now it's just, man, it's beyond amazing.
So I'd like to dive in a little bit, like what you're doing now. And you mentioned it a little bit briefly, and because we've had some time to spend together, and to surmise, maybe for the audience, is the reason you had, downfall was you were over levered. You're levered on, land. You're going to go buy more and more parcels. And maybe just kind of talk about what led to that downfall, and then how you've changed that model. What is it that you're doing today? How has the model been, and what did you learn and take some of those lessons when you're getting into the next go around on land development?
Sure. Yeah. So, the biggest thing, to try to simplify it, that took me, that, really whooped on me in the Great Recession, was I had a bunch of money out, right? Plus I had a bunch of debt. Right. So when things turn and values literally tanked overnight, on paper, I was bankrupt every which way you look at it. Just was. And so, and by the way, a ton of guys did go bankrupt, right? Ton of my buddies went under, right? A lot of people committed suicide back then. Tons of people. And the only reason I didn't go bankrupt, it's not because I was any smarter than the next guy, man. It's not. The reason I didn't go bankrupt is because I was doing business in numerous states. And what happened is, so my main town was Oregon, or city, right? Or state was Oregon, the Portland metro area back then. And that was my main, where most of my projects were happening. But I was also over in Boise, Idaho. And what happened is, Boise, Idaho is more of an urban sprawl market, and where in Oregon they have what's called a UGB, or an urban growth boundary. So they control supply, right? So it's hard. It's a lot harder for that market to go oversupplied. Now it still can, but it's harder. And so what happened is, in Idaho, I got hurt over there about a year and a half before anybody else in Oregon was experiencing any type of downturn. And so I took my lickings in Idaho, and then I was able to come over to Oregon and start exiting a bunch of my deals. before, you know, the shit hit the fan, you know? So that's what saved me. That's the only reason I didn't go under. Just being frank with you. But the biggest thing that took me down back then is that I'd closed on land, okay? And then I would go and develop it. I'd put in all the infrastructure, all the, you know, the utilities, the street, you know, everything to create a finished subdivision or neighborhood that was ready for homes to be built on. And so what happens is when you're in the middle, and by the way, so that, you know, you have, so like, let's just use round numbers because I'm going to refer to my model that I have today. So let's just use really round numbers. Let's just say a project back then, let's just say I had, let's just use smaller numbers than what's real, but let's just say on a deal, I had $1 million cash in a deal in order to close on the land and go get an A&D loan, which it was always a lot more than that, but you'll get my point. Is that, let's say I had $1 million capital into that deal in order to close on the land and then go and start the construction, start the land development. Well, on top of my $1 million, I also had $3 million of debt, right? Right. So it's like a 1-to-3 ratio, basically call it, you know, 33% down on a deal, right? Of capital. And so, but what happens is, like in Idaho, I'm thinking of Idaho right now. I think I had those finished lots sold for like, I don't remember what it was, 150,000 a lot or something. Well, I'm right in the middle of building this thing, right? And my values tank clearly down to like 60 or 80 grand a lot. Well, now the project's done for. I mean, it's done. And so, but what I did do is I finished the project out, and got it done. But the big exposure is when you're in the middle of these developing these land deals and then the market turns, you're done for, right? Now certain guys built themselves out of it, right? Built homes and rented them out or whatever. I was never smart. I wasn't that smart. I didn't know that I didn't even think of that strategy back then. But so the model today is what we do is the public home builders, you know, of our country. There's many of them. Is that what they need? The biggest reason we have a shortage right now in our country of homes is because builders don't have anywhere to build homes. Okay, they're looking for somewhere to build. So what we do today is we specialize in going and finding land off market that is developable. We take it through the entitlement process or the land use process, or we take it through and we get what's called preliminary plat approval. Okay, so we go through the political approval process and we get it in a pretty little bow. It's now an approved development. And then we sell those deals to our clients. And let me show you where this is pretty phenomenal. So remember I used that example a moment ago. I was in the middle of a development. It was $1 million cash in plus $3 million of debt. Well, let's use that scenario in this new model. Well, in that scenario, it might only cost me 100 grand to get it to be an approved subdivision, undeveloped at this point, no construction, but an approved subdivision. So I'm in 1/10 the cash I was when I would actually develop it. Okay. Plus I have no debt up to this point. Right. And Cody, why don't you have debt? You know, you had to go through that entitlement process and you bought the land. No. If there's anything you can learn from me today, just one fucking thing, excuse my language, but one thing, sorry, I start cussing when I get passionate. If there's one thing you can learn from me today, is that if you're going to play in the development space, if you're going to pay for a diamond, you got to make sure it's a diamond. And in our space, it's not a diamond until it's approved. And that if I'm going to pay development values for land, there's no way I should ever close on that land without having all the entitlements, all the approvals in place. That's just, unless you're buying it at as is farmland values, okay, which a lot of times you're not. You're usually not because people want the big dollars, is never close without approvals. So what happens is I don't have any debt at this point. And my buyers are going to buy it from me at approval. Well, I'm also going to close on the land at approval. So I do everything double closing, simultaneous closings. I use my buyer's money to pay my seller, and then I make my scrape out of the middle. Well, Cody, you mentioned a moment ago that you protect your downside. So that's why you don't have a lot of exposure in this market. You're right. So, well, Cody, you have 100 grand in the deal. You run the risk of losing that 100 grand. Well, do I? So, but here's the thing. when I go and I pre-sell my deals to my buyers early in the process, I get non-refundable earnest money from them. So as long as I don't default, that earnest money is non-refundable. So as long as I get the project approved, okay, that earnest money is non-refundable. On average, our buyers' earnest money at the minimum is equal to our total capital in, if not 3 to 5 times our total capital in. So even in a down market, as long as I still go get the project approved and my buyer walks, me and my fund, let's just say on average, have still 3x our money. Does that make sense? So we don't have exposure.
Yeah, and let me just say that just so, because I think there's some nuggets. Obviously, I think I understand how the entitlement process works. I don't know that a lot of people understand how that process works. So you go tie up land, you go for closer or, some version of closer to the development price, because you're not buying it for raw land or farmland, whatever that is.
Yeah. And let me stop. Let me clarify. Can we clarify something for you there real quick? Is that everybody's used to, I go do real estate and I close within 15 to 60 days of contract, right? That's fine. And if a seller comes to me and says, hey, Cody, no, I need you to close in 30 to 60 days. No problem at all. I will close in 30 days. But now instead of me putting it into my development division, I'm going to put it into my land bank division. And here's why. Because the only way I'm going to close in 30 days, 60 days, whatever, is if I'm paying as is today's values. So what happens is when I sell to a seller, yeah, no problem, I'll close in 30 days. You're not going to like the number, but I'll do it. Let's quickly run some comps. So let's do some values. What is your property worth as is today, as it sits? Well, guess what? I've never had a seller take me up on me closing in 30 to 60 days because, it might be I'm paying them 5, 8, 10 times as much money if they let me close at approvals, right? Well, then, Cody, how do you make any money selling to the builders? I'm in the value add business, people. I'm in the value add business. My clients so appreciate that I dealt with that entitlement process for them. Not only did I deal with, because it's a creative space. And by the way, the publics aren't very creative, and that's just not how their companies are built. But I cut, say, 6, 8, I cut somewhere between, on average, 9 to 18 months off their timeline as far as their time value money calculator. Plus, they didn't have to go through the pain to get it approved. And so where I make my money is in that value add, that I took a piece of raw land, and now instead of them having to go through all that and then, and then get it approved, I'm delivering it to them already approved in a pretty little bow ready to go. And so I'm able to make a spread on the development value of the land that I paid the seller versus an approved subdivision or plat, right? There's a difference there through value add. So anyway, sorry to interrupt, but I want to make sure people know we will close in 30 to 60 days, but you're never going to like the value.
Yeah. So let's talk through that. So exactly to your point. Hey, you got 10 acres, 50 acres, 100 acres. I don't know, whatever it is that you're going and buying. And as is value is $5 a square foot. But then you're coming in and maybe these numbers, I'm making them up. Maybe it's $1 a square foot. So you're going to pay $40,000 an acre. And so you're like, that's as is value is $1 an acre. However, I can buy it for $5 a foot, for $200,000 an acre or $250,000 an acre when I have approvals in place. And so a seller, they're like, wow, I get $1, $40,000 an acre, or I get 250 when I let you close. And so, but that might take a year or 2 years or however long that entitlement process is for someone or that particular municipality. But to your point is the market value to the builder is maybe $8 or $10 a foot. And so what you've done is you've tied up land. You're going to go do a lot of sweat equity, the entitlement, creatively solving the problem of entitling land, getting the approvals in place. And then you've used your end buyer's capital, down payment, earnest money on that $10 a square foot land price, which is oftentimes 3 to 5 times more money than you have earnest with the farm owner, ranch owner, wherever that the particular landholder's area is.
Yeah. So the only thing we don't do is that, yeah, between my earnest money with with the property owner plus my cost to get through the entitlement process, right? Jurisdictional costs, engineering costs, blah, blah, blah. But yes, those are where my costs lie. And we use our own capital to do that, or our funds capital, right? Someone can use their own, they can use friends. And I used friends and family for almost 2 decades. But, wherever that capital is coming from, I don't care. We never use our buyer's capital to go do any of that. And here's why. Because remember, most of our clients, if they're going to release their earnest money, they want to take security. They want to take a position on title. Well, I don't hold title, so I don't have anything I can give them security on. Now, there's other assets I own that I give them security on, but one thing I learned at a very young age is don't cross-collateralize all your stuff, okay? That can get you in some unfortunate situations. And so their earnest money just stays in escrow, but it's just not released. Right. And I have students of mine. That don't have a fund like us, or friends and family with money, or their own money. And so what they're actually doing, and it's one of our ninja moves we teach in our course at VestRight, is using your buyer's money, earnest money, or however you want to structure it. You can call it a lot of different things, but using your buyer's money to cover all your costs to get it entitled. Then you don't have a financial partner, you don't have a fund, you're not using your own capital, you're not using friends and family capital. The reason we don't do that, and the way they'll do that, by the way, because I said, well, Cody, you just said, Cody, they won't do that because they need security. Well, the way you do that is those funds, you don't call it earnest money. What you do is you lower the earnest money amount substantially that goes into escrow. And then what you do is you just have an agreement with the builder, your client, the buyer, where they're going to pay all the costs. So they're now paying all the vendors direct. And so on their books, it doesn't look like they're releasing earnest money with no security. They're just paying the vendors direct. The reason we don't do that is because you lose leverage, right? As soon as you ask your buyer to cover all your costs, now all of a sudden they're going to devalue your role, and you're not going to strike as good of a deal. But it's a great plan. I mean, I have one student, Lord willing, he's got, I don't know how many deals going right now. He's going to make, the latest number he told me was like 32 million in the next 12 to 18 months. And he's using buyer's money to do all his deals.
That's such a clever way of doing it. Obviously, yeah, the structure of that becomes very important. So like when you're doing a deal, what, and I know you, but it's like, what kind of profits are you making on this? You got 100,000 that you're entitling, engineering, civil engineers, maybe, attorneys, legal, meeting with the city councils or the town council meetings and going through that. So let's say it's on average 100 grand. Is that?
Yeah. So it depends, right? When I first got started, we were doing projects that were 2, 3, 4 lots. Today, we really don't look at anything that's, unless it's in a real high-end market, because it's all about revenue, the top dollars. But on average, right, we don't do anything that's less than 100 lots, right? We're doing projects that are 100 to 500 lots. So, there will be certain markets, right, that where the values are so high that we would do a deal that's 50 lots, but for the most part, we don't. So you first asked, what do we make on deals? So we don't have anything on our books that I'm aware of. Remember, I'm not in the day-to-day company, but we don't have any deals on our books that I'm aware of that we will make less than 7 figures, right? We had a deal that closed a few weeks ago that I think the top line before investors and, before our fund was paid and our fees to do the deal were paid. And, before, asset managers and all these different things, before the money started getting all split up, I think we made over $5 million on the deal. And on that deal, before our fees, our fees to the fund for getting the deal through the process, before our fees, we had like 250 grand cash in that deal. And so I'd say our average deal is that was a good one, right? But I'd say our average deal,
the top 5%. We want to know about the top 5%, not those the middle 90.
I mean, we things are good. Things are good. But I mean, I'll tell you our simple equation, and right now we are outperforming this. But let me tell you our very basic back to the napkin math formula. Okay. We will have 300 to 500 grand cash into a deal between our earnest money to the seller and our cost to get it through the process, right? 300 to 500 grand. And we will get that 300 to 500 grand back plus make at least at a minimum $1,000,000. So now, like I just shared you with one with you where the numbers were a lot different, right? It was 250 and 5 million. But that's our kind of our minimum threshold of what a deal has to look like for us to even consider it.
Yeah, that's like you said, it can also quickly go the other direction. Builders
Yeah.
stop buying, now they cancel their contracts, and at least you
And
have
that's
your
okay, because let's say I got 300 to 500 in. That means that at a minimum, I have 300 to 500 grand non-refundable earnest money in escrow. Okay, let's take that one deal. Let's take that deal I had 250 grand cash in. You know what my buyer's non-refundable earnest money in escrow was?
half a
It was
million.
over $1 million.
Okay.
So the market crashes, they walk. As long as I don't default, I just 5x my fund's money.
Yeah. That's I mean, the walking through the trenches of subprime meltdown, I think it really taught you some lessons. I know we're kind of winding down. I wanted to actually dive in a little bit into you removing yourself from the day-to-day operations.
Yeah.
So like, what was that process like for you? And, then what has been your experience, or what was limiting your performance of your company when you were still doing the day to day?
So I came to the realization in 2020, 2.5, probably 2 years ago, realistically. We're middle of 22 right now. That one thing I'm working on, Jake, is constantly how do I become more humble? Humility is so powerful and just so, man, it's so good. As soon as you quit blowing smoke and mirrors and trying to pretend or trying to bullshit, like as soon as you just commit to the words authenticity, transparency, and vulnerability and just be who you are, man, life becomes so much more fun, for one. And two, man, people start trusting you and respecting you. And I mean, they love that you don't know what the hell you're doing, right? I mean, they respect you for it because most people will never say it. But so just 2020, I just going through that humility process and looking at the size of my company. It was me and 2 or 3 people. And yeah, were we making 7 figures a year? Yeah. But we were doing, 1, 2, 3 deals a year and we just weren't doing anything. And quite frankly, it's because I'm a visionary. I'm an entrepreneur. So as soon as you ask me to start putting systems in place and hiring people and quite frankly, nurturing people, and like, I love our team and I would do anything for them. I'm loyal. I care. I have their back, but dude, I don't want to nurture them. I'm not the one that's going to come around and I, I don't, I love y'all, but I'm not the one that's going to ask you about how your kid's baseball game was. I'm not that guy. And so because I'm just not a good leader, right? I'm a good leader from a visionary standpoint, but I am a visionary, not an integrator, not an implementer. And I knew that about myself. And so, um, because of that, now have I integrated? Have I implemented before? Yes, clear back in the macadam days. I was the one that kind of grew that business. But because back then I'd rather have made $1 million a year and not have to do anything I don't want to do versus make 40 million a year and hate life. And so because I don't enjoy that stuff, I was always holding the company back because I wasn't willing to go do it. And so I started headhunting, took like 7 months, had an intense interviewing process, hired a recruiter, ended up hiring a phenomenal CEO out of Dallas, Texas. We relocated a few of our employees there, and now we're up to I think 25 employees or something. Which Jake, by the way, in our industry, you can do a lot of volume with not very many people, and our business has just exploded. The few people that are still there from back when I was running it are happier than they've ever been. And dude, I'm doing less than it's really interesting when you're doing less than the company than you've ever done, but yet you're making more money than you ever could have dreamed of. But it all started with humility.
Well, I think there's so many people have heard that same story from exactly the thing. Like they're like, I feel like I'm in the way at my own company, where you're walking around and you're like, they're much better at these things that I used to get like all my value out of. Like I was the guy that talked to the investors, or I was the guy that creatively put together the deals. And then what you find out is when you get out of the way, they're doing a much better job at it, you know, and you're like, wow, that's way better than I would have done it. That's way better.
Or they're actually doing it, right?
Yeah.
Where when I was in the way, it didn't get done, right? So, I mean, we're actually doing it. And so there's just our company, and just since the CEO started February 21. So in the last year and a half, what our company was, I mean, we still are the same foundation as far as our core values and our mission and all that, but like the company's unrecognizable.
Well, I do want to make sure that we get a chance to wind this down. I mean, I know you're an action oriented guy, and you mentioned that you've been part of some groups like EO, Go Abundance. That's where we connected up. But are there other kind of like action items or tactical things that people can do if they're wanting to take some action, you know, making a change in their life? Maybe they're on that workaholic, you know, treadmill. What are some of the first steps that they can take to getting off of that?
I mean, good question. I mean, obviously there's numerous books out there. I'm just going to throw out some different books to you real quick. Okay. One is The Speed of Trust, to help you understand what trust is all about and the power of trust. The other ones I'm going to have you think about, or 3 books I'm going to give you really quick, just as far as control is a big topic for me, about you giving up control and kind of surrendering. By the way, that's my word for 22 is surrender. To surrender myself is read a book called Letting Go, which Jake, you probably know what that is. I'm looking for my phone right now. Letting Go. Another one is The Surrender Experiment. And another one is, I'm pulling it up right now, The Untethered Soul, right? Those 3 books will really help you understand where you are as far as this world and this universe, and maybe really help you find some peace in your life. Because I will tell you, until you realize you're not in control, until you realize that you need to have faith in something. Okay. My faith is in Jesus, but I mean, have faith in something. Would I like your faith to be in Jesus? Yes. But I mean, dude, I don't care if your faith is in the rock outside. Like, have faith in something to realize you're not in control. Because here's what I'll tell you. I guarantee you do not have peace in your life unless you're exercising your faith muscle. There is impossible to have peace in your life without exercising your faith muscle. As soon as I find myself out of peace, I can go right over here and realize, okay, I'm not exercising my faith muscle. Pure and simple. So those 3 books I think will really help you in that area. Speed of Trust will help you in, you know, as far as, you know, trust and just how powerful it is and how it's the foundation of so many things. And then lastly, you know, yeah, of course, get into some masterminds, get into some events, follow some great influences, you know, through social or, you know, whatever. And then, you know, if anything on this podcast has, you know, or this interview has intrigued you about what I do, then obviously I'm going to pitch my online education company. So, you know, check out VestRight.com. We got a bunch of free content, videos, different things. And if it's something you're interested in, then pursue it. We'd love to be a part of your journey, part of your path. And we teach exactly what we do. So we're not one of these guys out there teaching stuff we don't do. We teach what we do. And we've been doing it for 20 years. So
yeah, so that's we'll put that in the show notes. The VestRight is. Where else can somebody follow you, find you?
Maybe you want to follow me personally. You know, so Cody Bjugan. So CodyBjugan. Last name's pronounced Bjugan. Drop the J. So follow Cody Bjugan on Instagram. Follow Cody Bjugan on Facebook. And literally it's at Cody Bjugan on both of them. So, and we're dropping content all the time, and hopefully some way, somehow, my personal brand or VestRight, we can touch your life in a positive way. And, that's why I'm having more fun, Jake, now than ever. Is I'm just so focused on impact. And I know we've all heard it 1,000 times, but I'll make it 1,001. The less I'm focused on the dollar or building the business or whatever, and the more I'm focused on impact and throwing down the rope and making a difference and all that, the more amazing my life becomes and the more money I make. And it sounds crazy, right? But I'm telling you, it's just the way it works.
Well, I think that there's so many bits of insight and wisdom in that this is for the people and the audience listening is, you only gather that experience going through, downturns, going through those despair. We didn't get a chance to really dive into some of the things about like what it's like when you're going through that downturn, why'd you just have cash? Well, I'm going to guess, I know where it was for me, is like I was overdrawn on every bank account. So I couldn't even put money in the bank without them taking the money. And so that's why I moved to the same thing, to just using cash. So obviously it created, things where criminal acts of trying to get money back into the system. And there's just things that you learn from being through that is hard to translate. Cody is able to drop some massive nuggets. And also he shares that out there. And I've seen it lots of times in person, but also through VestRight, the way that he's teaching people to change their lives through opportunities of land deals. And really think about that. 10xing your money or 20xing your money, or even using other people's money, leveraging their money to then potentially even change your life. And that is unbelievable. Go follow Cody Actually, I tried to say Bjugan, but it's Bjugan.
Got the J.
Yeah, I say Cody Bjugan at all of the places that'll be in the show notes. Put it in, follow him at VestRight. I appreciate you. Again, this has been a fantastic episode of Passive Wealth Principles.